So my name is Paulette. My um, parents, I was born in London, England, in southeast of London. My parents are from Jamaica. I have two young boys. Well, not young anymore. They're men. One's 21, one's 17.
Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi A14, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started into this episode.
Yeah, I'm a behavior learning mentor within a school, um, looking after children who have mental and physical disabilities.
All right. Thank you for that. So you say you were born in London, right?
Yeah.
Of Jamaica parents, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Tell me a bit about your adolescent growing up in London. Of course, now you have got children there in the UK who have grown up. Of course, they are now adults, 17, 21. Those are full mature adults. All
Yeah.
right. So that means you are in a position to be able to talk to me about the situation in UK in relation to our demography, which is the African diaspora.
Mm.
So tell me a bit about your growing up there in London.
So growing up in London for me, it was quite fun. I grew up in a household of many children. I come from a very large extended family. So I grew up amongst families, the village raised the child. So there was a lot of adult hands-on help with children around. There was always lots of children and lots of adults growing up. So we grew up in a household where there was a lot of love. It was fun. We were always out getting up to mischief, doing doing things. So we had quite fun growing up, and then going to school. It was in the areas that we lived in Southeast London. The schooling was quite mixed. Going to college and things like that was quite mixed. And we had quite a lot of fun growing up, and we was mixed going through to then secondary school, which I think you may call high school. Going through to there, still had quite a good mixture of friends and family. Everybody's family was involved with everyone. If we went to a friend's house, their parents would treat us as if we were their own. And it was a nice place to be. And growing up as a child, you thought to yourself, oh, nothing's fair, life's not fair. But looking back at it, we kind of we didn't come from a rich place, but we had a lot of love and a lot of care around us and a lot of fun. Um, so we grew up and we were very well educated. We were always taught our Black history. We went to church every Sunday. My uncle was the pastor of the local church. So we went to church every Sunday. We went to Sunday school. And we had, I suppose, looking back, we had quite a rich upbringing. Um, Bringing up my own children, moving out from where I came from, and seeking to better myself and everybody else did. We all kind of not drifted apart, but we all went in different directions. All my cousins and everyone, and everybody's now grown. They've got adults. They're married. I'm married. We've got our children, and then we're bringing up our children, and you're trying to explain to your children the type of life you had and how everyone around you was involved. And I think what's missing now is our elders that we were brought up with and had to have that respect for, and teaching respect in this day and age is not the same as when it was taught to us quite some years ago. And, my children now think, oh, we're so hard done by. But, when they listen to my stories and they think, oh, okay, maybe it's not that bad, but they have so much more on offer now. Sometimes I think, is it too much? Is it too overwhelming for them? But they have so much more on offer now. And I think it kind of confuses the issue a bit. But growing up because their dad is Ghanaian, so growing up as mixed boys, half Ghanaian, half Jamaican heritage, they get the two sides of the culture. They get two different cultures, and it's been nice for them. It's been a journey for them, but also as well, the way they're growing up and the area that they're now growing up, it's not so mixed. It's not as mixed as when I was growing up. There was Chinese and Indian and everybody all into the same culture, and we all got along and we all cooked together. Now they're growing up in a predominantly white area and having to try and fight for their rights and, you know, adapt to certain situations or get their friends to adapt to their situations. But they're quite balanced now and they're quite stable. And the mix of friends that they have quite a great mix of friends now. And it's nice for them to be able to, a lot of their friends are from an African culture or the English culture or Italian. And they now have a nice mix of friends at the age that they are now. And they're able to share their experiences. Whereas growing up, I think it was harder for them growing up culturally because they went to predominantly white schools where they would have things said to them. And it was a bit of a fight for them in that sense. But now, I mean, they're able to share their feelings and share their culture with people, and they can look back. And the conversations we have now are completely different to the ones that we used to have when we was younger. They know that there are still certain opportunities that won't be readily available to them as quickly as it may be to their other friends from other cultures. They know that, but they strive along and they fight for it, and they get where they are. With a mum like me, they push forwards.
Thank you for that. That is very interesting. It's interesting because we are looking at the intergenerational changes, in that you have the chance to have been born in the UK, in London. That is where you grew up, and that is where you also see your children growing up, or they have grown up, as it were. And you are a testimony of that. One time I was doing an interview in Nigeria. I was interviewing the head of the National Orientation Agency in Edo State. Of course, this is an agency that was supposed to project the Nigerian image, to define who we are, how we need to respond to our image, what it even mean by our national identity and the rest of it. So he was telling me how when they were growing up, they have access to free education and the rest of it. But now the children that are born in Nigeria do not have access to those facilities. In fact, Nigeria educational system is suffering from very many dimensions. Then at the point I was telling him, but look at you, you are in the middle between what is good and what is bad. So what has happened? Now, I think I want to ask you the same question. So you were saying that there was the kind of adolescent that you had when you were growing up in London compared to what you see now with your children. There is a difference. With me, you are in the middle. What happened?
Yeah.
Tell me.
So when I was growing up, of course, racism was around, prejudices and things like that. Of course, all of that was around. But because we had such a large extended family, we were quite privileged in the sense that we had lots of people around us that always educated us and always kept us grounded. And, even the people that were not born into our culture, when they came into our culture, they were educated about our culture and we were educated about their culture. And, I suppose the way my grandma and my granddad were, they were very accepting of all different cultures. So if anybody married outside of the culture, they were accepted and they were brought in. So our family just grew, and all of our friends and everyone. And, we was taught from a very young age that don't let the color of your skin or the texture of your hair or anything like that allow you to not go for something or push yourself forward for something in life. And that's the same way that I've kind of brought my own children up, raised my own children. I think back then when I was growing up, racism wasn't something that you couldn't even say that word. And it was all hidden. Things were said to you and you'd think, oh, that doesn't feel right. But it was always buried under the carpet. And you would go home and you'd talk about it and it would be discussed. But then you'd go back out into the world again, especially going through life, applying for jobs and things like that. You would apply for jobs that you thought, oh, as a Black person, I'll get that job. But you wouldn't go for another job that you thought might have been designed for a white person. So I suppose we were all kept in pockets into little groups, and that's where you kind of stayed. And so you ignored what was going on outside of your group because you had your group that loved you and cared for you, and it didn't matter about what anyone else felt. I suppose now, growing up, what's changed is we can't, as a people, sit quietly anymore because we deserve those privileges that others are entitled to or that they get. So now moving forwards, it's been a fight with lots of different things, like, especially being a Black woman, it's been, you can't wear your hair like that. You can't have your hair out like that, or you can't dress like that, or you have to speak a certain way or be a certain way for people to start accepting you. But what's changed again is that people are like, no, hold on a minute. This is me. This is my culture. This is who I am. I'm not changing for you. So where my boys are now, for them, we've had the Black Lives Matter movement. They've been able to live through this and see the changes. So society on a whole has now changed, and they're watching those changes that we have suppressed for so long. We're seeing more of us on TV. The jobs that we're being given now is higher up the scale. And, we're seeing us portrayed in different roles on TV and things like that, and just around. And I know there's still a long way to go and there's still some work to do, but my boys are in the midst of this change. And they can see what's going on, and they're able, with the backing that they've had from us as a family and all my other nephews and friends' children and stuff, they're able to join together and say, no, we're not putting up with this. We're coming out, and if something's not right, we're now going to tell you it's not right. So they're on this journey. Most of these children are on this journey, moving forwards, fighting forwards and standing up for themselves, not in an aggressive manner, but they're just standing up for themselves and saying, no, you can't do that, and this is wrong. And the world is slowly changing. It is changing. There is still more to do, but it is changing.
There is a kind of optimism. We are hoping that things will change by our effort, not just simply hoping. We are hoping, but we are working. We are actually we are basing the change on our effort, because until we want to change, until we take action, not till we change. I sort of like that a lot.
Yeah.
All right. Now, a kind of a curiosity of mine. You are married to a Ghanaian and you are from Jamaica. That is very interesting. That is a very fine combination. And I'm sure that your children would like to ask you a couple of questions. Of course, they are going to have a better advantage of that because they can speak to their dad, they can speak to their mom, and if they get angry, they can go to ask in Jamaica, or they can go to Ghana. The choice is, they have a lot of choice now. So they really are at an advantageous position. But for you, have you ever what kind of connection do you have to Jamaica? What do you feel? What have you asked? What have you known about your Jamaica origin in terms of the conversation that you have growing up, and now you are an adult? Of course, you are a mother and a wife also. Yeah.
So my connection to Jamaica is obviously my mum. My mum was born in Jamaica, and as was her siblings and my aunties and uncles and her parents. She came here when she was 14, and obviously her mum came first, and then, as most people do, they then send for the children. So my mum was 14 when she arrived into England. So she wasn't just kind of like thrown in at the deep end and had to fend for herself. She still arrived to the rich culture still being produced by her parents. So she was still able to have the food and the music, and just the way of life, just the way we live and just the way we are as a people. The accents as well were still very strong. And in return, my mum raised us the same. We still have our Jamaican heritage in the sense of the food and the music we was raised on, and just the whole cultural life and the whole sense of being as a Jamaican person. And I don't think it's just as a Jamaican person, it's as a Caribbean, as a person from the Caribbean. Um, so, it's just the way in how we do things, how we see things. That's my connection really.
All right. And looking at identity, because here in this podcast, we talk a lot about our history, our origin, where we are coming from. We are essentially about storytelling, about us. You see, we're just talking about you now, where you are coming from, your background. Of course, later we're going to talk about what you do. You have written a book, you are doing coaching program. We are coming to that just now. But first, it
Yeah,
is important that we know our root, our origin. What is
of
that?
course.
What is our makeup? We are intentional about that. All right, now let's talk a little bit about, okay, I want to call it curiosity again. In terms of identity, what kind of question do your children ask you now that they have their father who is coming from Ghana, you are coming from Jamaica, and both of you, you are living in the UK. If you were born in the UK, sort of have your own baggage that you pass on to them intentionally or unintentionally, your experience, of course, is passed on to your children. And I want to believe that at a certain point, they make their own experiences and they want to compare sometimes. So they must ask you questions. And when it comes
Yeah.
to identity, what do they share with you? Well, tell me about that conversation.
So some of the conversations that we have, they normally ask about, who taught me how to cook? Why do we cook like this? Why do we think we're the best cooks? Because we have that joke where we say, no, Jamaicans are the best cook. They're the best at everything. So they have that banter between us. And it's like, why do you think you're the best? Okay, so you cook rice and peas and Ghanaians cook jollof rice. So why do you think yours is the best? It's two different flavors. It's two different. Why is yours the best? And we're like, we're just the best at we're just the best at everything. And that's the kind of banter that we have between us. They ask us, they ask me what was life growing up with a Jamaican parent, because they see both sides as being quite strict. It's funny because they see the Ghanaian side as being the more strict and the Jamaican side as being strict, but not as strict, is a little bit more lenient. Maybe it's because I'm their mum. Had I been a Jamaican dad, the conversation might be different. So we have those types of conversations. They talk about would they ask questions like, would I ever move to Jamaica? I was born here, but although I was born here, they always said to me, you was born here, but you always seem more Jamaican than English. You've adopted more of the Jamaican culture, more so than the English. Whereas I think I have both. I was brought up very God-fearing, so I've brought them up the same. I know they do believe in God and their faith is quite strong. Probably not as strong as I want it to be, but I know that they do believe and they do read scriptures from the Bible and things like that. And sometimes we discuss that, and they have this thing of, why is it that Black people believe so strongly in God? What has been your experiences with God that makes you say that, yes, this is real, and this is why you have to believe? So they're asking questions, I suppose, that I could never ask my parents. I could never say to my mum, why do you believe in God? Do you believe he's really real? Why do you believe he's real? What's your experience? Whereas I suppose as we go up the line, I'm a bit more liberal than my mum probably was. So they are more free to ask questions, I suppose, that as children growing up from a Jamaican background, I couldn't ask. Had I been born in Jamaica as well, my attitude may probably have been different to their questions. But being brought up in a completely different culture and having the best of both worlds, I suppose I'm a little bit more lenient, and I'm a little bit more free in their thoughts. And I like them to be free with how they have a conversation with me.
And that conversation is going on. It is very important that we have the conversation. We must pass on the story of our generational experience, because
Of
if we don't
course,
have,
yeah.
I believe that sometime in Africa and among many African diaspora, like you just said, And sometimes we didn't have that conversation. We didn't really talk about ourselves freely. It would have seemed sort of, it wasn't something that we needed to do. We just needed to talk about our survival, how we're going to
That's
survive
right.
now.
Yeah.
We didn't talk much about the deep things that we really needed to talk about, so that I can understand it, that when
Yeah.
you are in a situation where you are just about life and death, like how we have been placed. Like if you look at many places in Africa today, let's say Nigeria, for example, because I'm coming from Nigeria, you will hardly see a lot of people that talk about philosophy. Even though we talk about religion, we are only at the superficial level of religion, on just the okay, I believe in God. Yeah, God is going to come. God is going to help us. Yes, but it is deeper than that. We need to really go
Yeah.
out and figure it out. Why do we say it like that? What does it really mean? Is it in terms of the deeper sense of that? For you to do that, you need a lot of thinking. You need to reflect a lot. Nobody have
Mm.
that kind of time to reflect, to philosophize, to identify, to question the reality, because you begin to make that conversation when you question what is in front of you,
Yeah.
instead of just accepting it that they have said it. Who said what they have said is right? Why don't I question it? I am also here. If Galileo said that is how he see it, that is fine. But Galileo is a human being. I'm also a human being. What if I have to see it differently? I cannot also contest that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is only 36 alphabet in the letters in the alphabet. That is fine. But what if we could add the 37th? Or maybe we could remove one to make it 35. Or maybe we don't even need that alphabet anymore. You see, we need to question everything. But before we can do that, we need to take care of the primary things. Like, do you have food to eat? Do you have a place
Mm.
to stay?
Yeah.
If we don't take care of those primary things, it is difficult for us to talk about philosophy, to talk about the real conversation that we need to have.
Yeah.
And I believe that those that are putting us in that condition know this is the situation. That is why they put us there. So we don't really need to care about the deep thing. We just need to talk about our survivor.
No.
Anyway, that's a little bit
Yeah.
of digression.
No, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. I love that.
All right. Now, before in the beginning, when you were talking about you were saying that you work also with children of disability or something that have mental health problem or
Yeah.
something like that. Please
Yeah.
explain that more to me. We are interested.
Mm. So I started about, it was, gosh, over 25 years ago, that I started working with children with physical disabilities, children in wheelchairs, children that needed to be tube fed, and things like that. So I started working there first. It wasn't something that I'd chosen straight away. I was working with children, and then I went on maternity leave. And when I came back, my job title had been closed. And they said to me the only other title that was available was working with children with disabilities. So at first, I was quite afraid because I thought, oh my goodness, I've never worked with children in wheelchairs and children that have to be, tube fed, fed through the stomach, through a peg, and things like that. So it was really, really difficult. But I had a very good friend of mine that she was already working in that department, and she took me through, she led me through, she guided me, and she taught me everything that I needed to learn. And after a year or so, I looked back and thought I would never go back. I can't believe that. I thought that this was going to be really, really hard. So I stayed there working with children with physical disabilities for 25 years, and then sadly got made redundant. The place I worked in was closed down. And over the last 10 years, I've become a behaviour learning mentor working with children with mental disabilities such as autism, ADHD, social communication difficulties. So that's where I've been for the last 10 years as a behaviour learning mentor in a primary school. So basically, my role is to go into um, classrooms and help, disadvantaged children, children that need that extra help in class, um, children that need to have um, assessments done and things set up for them. Some children struggle to come into school, and it's about helping them to get into a safe space. and doing some work with them and then getting them into a classroom. So yeah, it's a lot. It entails a lot. So it can be quite mentally draining at times, but rewarding.
Okay, now let's look. When you were working with the children with disability, tell me about the feeling. How did you feel about being there? What is your emotional state of being there? Tell me something more about that. How do you feel?
When I first started, it was I found it quite disturbing, um, to think that there was all these children with these severe conditions. You know, there was children with their hearts around the wrong way. Um, and I actually felt a little bit guilty because I thought there was me with my healthy child, that I was complaining, wakes up in the middle of the night and doesn't sleep. And there were these parents with these children that they didn't even know if they were going to wake up the next morning and that child was alive, because their prognosis for a lot of them was not great. So over the years, at first I felt sorry for them and the parents, but then over the years you learn that they don't want your pity and the parents don't want your pity. They just want you to love them and work with them. And that is what happened. And then, I had a great connection with the parents, and working with their children. We built up such lovely relationships with all the parents and the children. And you get to understand that having a child like that can be quite a lonely world for a parent. And it's a bereavement for them because they spend most of their lives thinking, if only my child could walk, if only my child could talk, if only my child could open their eyes and see me, if only their child could hug me, and that's the type of thoughts that they go through every day. And a lot of them don't sleep at night because they're too afraid that if they wake up because a lot of the children were on oxygen as well and had to be throughout the day and throughout the night. So, the palliative care, when you came home, you kind of offloaded because, that constant care for the whole day, it can be really stressful. So I take my hats off to all parents who have got severely disabled children, because it's not easy and it's not an easy world, and it can be quite lonely for adults as well, caring for these children. And there's been a few children in my time that I worked with that have passed away, that I work quite closely with. And it strengthens you and it helps you to move on. But the relationships that I've had with the parents, I will never forget those. And some of them I'm still in contact with. So yeah, it's difficult. But I think as well, some people don't quite understand that these children actually have a character. Some of them smile at you, even if they can't see you. Just their whole, like the flicker of a finger might mean, that they've heard you, or, so you have to be really, really observant to recognize the characteristics of their body movements and things like that. And just the flicker of an eye and, things like that. You have to be really, and the twitch of the side of the mouth or something, it means they're responding to you. So yeah, it is. It was a very rewarding but very challenging at times.
That's very deep. It's very deep. In that you look at the human being, because it's the human being that we are talking about. We might really have everything that we need, but we're still here complaining. But there are some people among us who just have never been able to stand up in their 2 feet in their entire life. And this is not because they have committed a crime or for any fault of their own. They were born like that. Uh, I think if we can be a little bit appreciative of what we are, in the natural world that we live in, the environment that we live in, the opportunity we have to be able to talk and explain our feeling, I think this work can be a little bit more better instead of just all the rush and all the stupidity that we do sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, when you work with those types of children, it just really makes you appreciate what you have. And it also, at the same time, makes you strive for more. So those things that you think, oh, I'm too fearful to go for in life, being in that kind of environment, it pushes you, it spurs you on to go after the things that you want. And it also strengthened my own boys, because I took them into work with me a few times at a very young age to actually come and connect with these children with these severe disabilities, and for them, I think it was such a great experience for them to have that, for them to be able to be involved in that. And some people used to say, "Oh, you shouldn't take them there because it's not fair." But for me, as a mum, I think it's really important that our children are open to all sorts of lives, all sorts of aspects to life. Um, and that's what I've tried to do with both my boys. So they have never forgotten that experience. And one of the children that I was quite close to, he was one of the ones that had passed away, and they had met him quite a few times. And they'd watched me feed him, through the stomach and things like that. So, they're grateful that they've had those experiences, and they kept saying, one of us could have been born like that. And I said, anybody can be born like that. You don't have to be born like that. It could happen to you throughout your life. It could happen to you in your adult life, that you end up becoming severely disabled for a reason, for one reason or another. And I'm glad that they was able to experience that.
If you were to say maybe this is the 2 or 3 most important lessons that you learn working in that situation and knowing those kind of human beings who are just like us in everything, only that they have been unfortunate by a fault not their own, what would you say you have learned?
Um, I've learned to be extremely grateful. I've learned not to prioritize and not complain about things that are out of your reach, and just to keep moving on, and it's made me quite humble, um, and it's quite calming, and it makes you quite positive, because you're then able to reframe all that negativity. It's taught me that as well, to reframe a lot of negativity. Yeah, and it's also made me, with my own children, when they've been ill, people used to say to me, if they've had to go to hospital for anything, people used to say to me, why are you so calm? He's just done this or he's done that, and he's at hospital, they'll be panicking. It's that working in that situation has actually calmed me when I've had to take my own children to hospital, because the amount of times myself and my other colleagues have had to jump in an ambulance with a child when we've had to call an ambulance for them, within the workplace, and you're in that moment, and you've called the parents, and the parents are trying to get to the hospital as well, and you're thinking to yourself, and it's quite a selfish thought, because you think, I don't want to be the one, if something happens to the child and they don't pull through this, I don't want to be the one that has to tell the parent that. So, being in situations like that, and then going with my own children to hospital, you stop and you think to yourself, well, no, you're not going to die. You just need to go and get something checked that you've hurt. So it does calm you in certain situations, because, and it lives with you. It lives with you, and for the positive, not for the negative. So yeah, so I've learned a lot of things, a lot of the ways that I probably do things.
So you also work with children, I think, also with adults on within the topic of self confidence. I don't know if I'm correct on that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to say anything about that? We are so interested in knowing that.
Yes. So I co-own a company called, co-owner of a company called I Am Echo, and myself and my business partner, we went to the Laurie Small School of Modelling. That's where we first met. And after meeting there some years, we then decided that we was going to set up a company called Us Girls. There was 3 of us at the time. And we set this company up, and it was organising fashion shows for children. And because we were always told growing up, when we applied for modelling jobs ourselves, we were told we weren't tall enough, we weren't thin enough, the usual stigma that attaches itself to modelling. We decided to set up our own company. So that's what we've done. We set up a company, and we were training children how to do catwalk, how to runway. And we decided that we was going to use it to set up our own shows, and that we were going to take any age, size, culture. And we'd done this for quite some years, moving around the country, setting up fashion shows, and it was great. And then life happened, really, and the 3 of us split. Then 5 years ago, myself and my now business partner, we re-met about 5 years ago at a business event. And we said, look, it would be really nice to get together and put another show on. So that's what we decided. We then renamed the company to I Am Echo. And we started taking everyone of all ages, shapes, sizes, cultures, you name it. And we trained them up to do runway training, but it was runway training with a twist. We were actually teaching them about the power in their walk. And we decided that we were going to teach them how to be confident and how to be resilient and build their self-esteem. So what we do is, with these shows, we run workshops where we teach confidence building to children and adults. And then we put on shows at the end, and we get them to do a little talk and talk about where they've come from and how they feel now as to when they first joined the course and where they are now and how they feel with that. We've just got into school, so we run after school clubs with children. We teach them confidence through elite games. We've just run an Easter session, the first 3 days of this week, at Easter camp for children, teaching them confidence, taster sessions for 3 days, but it was for the whole day. So that's basically what we do.
So you work only with children in area of confidence building, or do you also work with adults in this area?
Both. We work with children and adults, building their confidence, but we do separate workshops. We do workshops for the children to build confidence, and we do workshop for the adults as well. And at the end of the workshop normally lasts about 6 weeks. It depends. Sometimes it's 6 weeks, sometimes it's 12 weeks. And at the end of the workshop, we put on a fashion show where we invite up and coming designers. And it's, we open up a platform. So it's up and coming designers that are well established as well. And we invite them to put their clothing into our show. It's kind of like working in partnership. So, we're teaching young adults and children and older adults as well, confidence building, and putting on a show at the end. So it's something different. It's like your extracurricular activity. We also done a fashion show with seniors. So the youngest of that group was 60, and the eldest was 86.
Like, you are helping people to build their confidence, and you said it's more like a kind of an extracurricular work. That is a lot of work. Why the hustle? Why should people build confidence?
Because it helps them to navigate through life. Some people don't feel confident to even just speak to somebody else. Some people wouldn't feel confident like sitting here right now and talking about something great that they've done, or to share it. Some people won't go for jobs because of fear stands in their way, and they don't feel they're confident enough to go for the interview, or they don't feel they're confident enough to just go for that dream that they want. So we're teaching them to find their superpower, as we call it, and it's about helping them to build resilience and helping them to feel confident, feel good about themselves, believe in themselves and love themselves, and go forwards in life. and get what it is that they want. It's even just about issues with friendships and relationships and things like that. We've had people say to us that our workshops was like therapy. And it's just for them to, if you don't have confidence, if you don't have some level of confidence, then there's lots of things that you won't perform in your day-to-day life. There's lots of tools that come with confidence to help you perform whatever it is you need to do. Some people, it's even the simplest things of they won't cook a certain meal because they don't feel confident to cook that meal. So it's about helping them through life. It's about helping them navigate and find their niche and find them and love themselves and just have that faith.
All right. And maybe you are organizing this workshop now, and there are people that are participating, and maybe after a while you talk to them like, why is it that up until this point you didn't build your confidence? You didn't know that you could do. Of course, probably you might not just put it like that, or maybe you are telling them how to speak up, express themselves, no? Because, like you said, if you don't have the confidence that you can do this, you will never do it. No, you think that you cannot do it, whether you can actually do it. There is a lot of evidence to show that you can do it. No,
Yeah.
maybe out of curiosity, you want to ask them or know why is it that up until this point you didn't do this? Like, what is stopping people from building their confidence? Well, what is responsible for that?
I think it's a fear factor, and people not building their confidence can go really, really deep. And it could be, trauma, suffering from trauma from home, from just working life or just life in general. Constant absence from places. It's people get stopped because they build up this fear in themselves and they build up this mindset that they can't do it. And maybe from a child, they've been told, you're not capable, or you can't do that, or people have spoken negative to them and they believe things from their childhood. I don't just believe confidence. Confidence doesn't just, lack of confidence is not something that happens overnight. Lack of confidence is something that has been ingrained in you from childhood, and you carry it and carry it and carry it with you. Sometimes you learn to navigate a different way and get through things, but are you actually really going towards the thing that you want, or are you avoiding it because you don't want to deal with certain issues that might flare up, certain triggers that might flare up? So they avoid these things. So confidence, confidence does it comes from somewhere deep, and it just takes that one person or that one thing to happen good for you, where you think, oh my goodness, I've been sitting here all this time thinking I can't do this, and actually I had the key in my hand all the time to do it myself. So people come along because they want to start believing in themselves. Some people come along out of curiosity to see, is this actually really going to work for me? Is this really for me? But during the courses, we cover lots of things. We cover mirror time, where we ask them to look in the mirror, look at themselves in the mirror, just stare at themselves for a few seconds, and then say something positive to yourself. We teach them how to meditate. We teach them how to journal. We do vision boards and things with them just to see where they are now and where they want to be. And just opening themselves really to the universe and, learning how to manifest what it is they want in their life. So there's quite a lot involved. We touch on bullying, we touch on body shaming and things like that. So yeah, there's a lot involved within the course.
Thank you for that. You see, I was almost, I was smiling when you mentioned opening yourself up to the universe, because I really believe that so much that we have infinite potential in front of us. One time I was interviewing a scholar in Africa. And of course, I've done series of interview with him. We still have another one coming up soon. So we were talking about spirituality this time, and that okay, at the point he was saying that everything that we want is already possible. Everything is already there. You want life, you want death, they're in front of you. Just choose. What do you want? It is you that will choose.
Yeah.
You want the possibility that there is, because if it is not possible, it will not be there. And if it is not there, meaning it is not possible. What just need to happen is for you to manifest the potential into reality.
Yeah.
All the potentials are there.
Mm.
Everything that we see in the world today, they are already present, they're already possible.
There.
But we need somebody or people who are able to manifest that potential existence to the actual existence that we can see. So I love that where you made mention of opening up yourself to the universe, because the universe actually have already made everything possible for us. You see, for the fact that it is until the point that the mirror was invented, that was when we could see ourselves in the mirror, doesn't mean that was actually the possibility of us being projected. It's just because we didn't yet have the instrument to measure it. But we have already been there. If you take out the light, if you may be in a room, you take out the light, it is dark. You don't see your shadow anymore. But your shadow really hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there.
Yeah.
Just let the light shine. The shadow is there. It never went anywhere. It had been there all along.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I'm not going to take that any further.
No, it's good. Yeah.
Now, you have written a book. Now, before mentioning the book, now we have talked about a lot about different things, from your origin, your story, the background of what you do to what you do, your business. Is there any way this can relate to the book that you have written, or is this something completely apart? Help us understand that.
So, the book is a fiction book. Although it's fiction, I do believe that there is elements of truth in it. And I say I believe there are elements of truth in it because there are parts of the book that, as a child growing up, I would listen to friends and family speak about things that would go on within their household and things like that. So they are things that I've kept in my subconscious and in my head. Growing up in school, my English teacher always told me that I had such a vivid imagination. She could never decide whether I was telling the truth or whether it was a lie, whether it was fantasy. And she said to me, one day you're going to be a great storyteller. But again, fear for me, which is why I started teaching confidence and going on confidence courses and myself, was because I wasn't brave enough to do some of the things that I wanted to do when I was growing up. And looking back, I had such big dreams to do lots of things that I didn't do. And it hurts me to think that I could look at other people and allow them, not give them that push as well, to go forward and do the things that they are capable of doing. Because I wouldn't want anyone to feel like I felt in the past. So looking back, there was lots of things that I should have done, and the book was one of them. So the book actually didn't get written until lockdown. And it was funny because when I started writing it, I had my whole front room with just paper along the wall. And before that, actually, I'd gone on Dr. Ava Brown's book to business course. And I learned so much from her through that. And it was her that I then got the inspiration from to put paper all along my wall and just write about every character, down to the last piece of food they liked, how they chewed it, everything like that. And all the images, I suppose, from growing up and the conversations that I'd had growing up with friends, everything just kind of flowed. And, the story had started 12 years ago. So when I got the manuscript back out again and started reading, and I thought, oh my goodness, I hadn't changed. So what I wrote 12 years ago and then rewrote during the lockdown, it was extremely similar. And I thought, right, this is it. This is where I need to go from. So lockdown gave me that. I really enjoyed lockdown, by the way. But lockdown gave me that incentive to get the book done. And that's when I wrote the book and finished it, and everything flowed, and I was gone. I was just in the zone. My head was in that book. You couldn't get me out of it. People phoned me and I would go, no, I can't talk to you. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote, handed the book over to Ava, and she said to me, it's too long for one book. And I said, no, it's not. It's fine. It's fine. It's not too long. She went, I'm telling you, it's too long. So we split the book into 3, and it became a trilogy. So book 1 has been written, which is Silent River, and I'm in the process of doing book 2.
That's interesting. I tell people that everybody should write a book. It doesn't mean everybody will become a bestseller, but writing a book is actually registering your name in the universe. Because up until now, nothing has really surpassed the possibility of us able to leave a print. Now, if you go to the pyramid, or go to the tombs in the pyramids of Egypt or in Sudan, you will see some written text. That is essentially what we are talking about here. Make sure that what you think, the idea in your head, is not buried with it. Because if it is buried with it, you will decay like the skull and every other part of you. Nobody will ever know that. Of course, maybe in the distant future, we might develop technology to be able to assume everything that every human being that have ever lived on earth think. But up until now, we don't have that possibility. So the ancient people in Egypt put down what they think. And that is how we knew who they were and able to manage to have an insight into their kind of life. Just like them, we should be able to put down our thoughts. If we don't, our existence is cancelled by us. Yeah. You see, in Africa, it is believed that we don't die. We live forever. But how we live forever is in experience. Life essentially is about experience. But this experience, sometimes, we need to look for a way to make sure that it is documented. If it is not documented, it is not there. This can also be to a disadvantage to a larger part of the African experience, no? In relation maybe to the West, who at a point said, Africa have no history. It is stupid to say that Africa have no history, because how could we not have history? Of course, they were talking from their point of view that from their experience, we should have been like them, but we are not like them, therefore we are not there. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that you as a human being, you are 30 years old, you are 40, 50 years old, your experience is enough to make bestseller even. But even if you do not become a bestseller yet, still put it down. You are telling the universe that you are here.
Yeah.
That is how 50 years from now, 100 years from now, somebody can pick up a book and read. It doesn't have to be the best book ever, but put it down.
Of course.
All right. I'll come back to this.
Yeah.
What is the central message of this book?
So when I wrote it, I suppose there was lots of, I already had lots of thoughts in my head. I love telling stories. I love making things up and writing it down. So I knew that I would get around to writing a book one day, and I knew that I had so much plots and twists and turns in my head. The message at the beginning was about who are your friends and keeping an eye on who are your friends and who are your enemies, and keeping your enemies close. That was the message, and it was supposed to, for the reader, it was supposed to make them question their friendships and question where they are in life with their friends, and if these friends are really purposeful to them, and is it worth having these friendships? It was kind of a real how can I explain it? Not sinister, but it was meant to say to the reader, just keep a close eye on who's around you and those that you keep around you, and the effect that they have on you, and the effect they make you have on yourself. So that was supposed to be the message. But with people reading the book, it was never meant to be a self-help book. That's not what it was. It was meant to be a fiction story. But a few people have come back and said, well, I actually read the book and it's actually helped me to think like this or do this or realize that something's happening that I didn't actually realize. So, I've had lots of different feedback, but for me originally that was how the book was written, was to keep a close eye on who's around you.
All right. I think in 2015, I just want to come to what you're saying there, that I really think it is important for authors. No, it has sometimes when we write, we believe that we are writing for ourselves, but sometimes we're also writing for others.
Yeah.
Because now what we have written is going to be open for interpretation also for other people. I think we
Yeah.
need to be genuine in our communication, in our book, in our
Of
writing.
course. Yeah, definitely.
Now, how can people find this book? Because I think it is important that they read it, share with them how they can find it, where they can buy it.
So the book at the moment, it's on Amazon. That's the only place that it's on at the moment. It's on Amazon.
All right. Now, I want to thank you so much, Paulette. If you were to conclude this conversation in your own words, what would be your final thought here, considering what we have discussed today? Please go ahead and do that.
So my final thoughts, I think I'll just say something quickly about the book. So the book really is about 5 friends and the mishaps they go through in life, and they all have a part in telling you about their own journey, and at the end it all connects. There is a massive secret between the 5 friends. And that secret comes out in book 2. In fact, I will say the secret is already written in book 1, but I've been told it's so cleverly written that no one can find it. So that's fine. The secret will be revealed in book 2. The book also, as well, when you read it, you kind of have to read it with an open mind. It touches on witchcraft. It touches on child abuse. It touches on friendship issues. It touches on trust. And so many aspects of it touches on. So a lot of people have said they've struggled to get past chapter 1 because it is so deep and so sinister and so dark. Chapter 1 is, but it kind of sets the scene for the rest of the book. So my final thoughts is if you've got something to do it. Don't be afraid. Don't think about what other people might think. Because if you do, you'll be sitting on the same rock for forever. You won't move across to the mountain. So, just go for it. Think about what's the worst thing that could happen. If no one's going to get hurt and no one's going to die from it, just go for it. Move forwards and just go. And that's the kind of stance that I've taken since lockdown, is just to push myself and go for things. If it doesn't happen, then, and I really want it to happen, if it's supposed to happen and God says it's going to happen, we'll find a different way around it. Things come to you in the most mysterious ways, but don't ever give up on your dream because you can't be bothered, or somebody else has said it won't work, or it's really silly. Just do you and keep moving forward.
That's great. That's powerful. Just go for it. Because maybe you don't hit the target that you are setting at, but you will learn from it.
Yeah.
And maybe that learning is even what is the most important, because if you learn now, then you can restart again.
And the quote that I have, just going to say, the quote that I have at the end of my book is, "There's nothing so intoxicating as sitting on the edge of what is possible."
That is where we're going to end the conversation, because I want that one to sink into the mind of the people. Thank you so much, Paulette. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Obehi. Thank you.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening, and talk to you in the next episode.